I watched Worlds Collide this morning. WWE aired the show for free on YouTube on their English channel and their Spanish language channel. And between the two channels, last I checked, the show had nearly 4 million views. So they got some eyeballs on that show. And it was a great introduction for people who may not follow the AAA product or Lucha Libre in general. And I'll just say it, I enjoyed Worlds Collide more than I did Money in the Bank. Worlds Collide was a better show than Money in the Bank. Yeah, I know we talk about story and the importance of, and it is very important to have story, and context going into these PLEs and PLE type shows. And there was more of that. There was more story going into some of the matches at Money in the Bank than there was Worlds Collide, but I just had more fun with this show than I did the other one. They did not use the hexagon ring. I don't really care either way. I was just curious if they would use it. They gave Corey Graves the play-by-play assignment with Conan as his color guy. Conan's energy was not exactly, matching Corey's, but Conan, he's been through the ringer health-wise now for years. I mean, I'm not expecting him to be out there doing, jumping jacks. I think it was good to have him out there given his involvement with AAA to fill in the blanks on certain things for the audience because he has more familiarity with the product than almost anybody else would. Although Corey Graves, he came prepared. Clearly he did his homework. Rey Mysterio cannot wrestle on the show because he had surgery and he's recovering, but they trotted him out there for a promo at the beginning of the show. He's growing a beard, by the way. And he spoke in Spanish, and he talked about being on the first When Worlds Collide show that WCW and AAA co-produced in 1994. And then he made a curious comment when he said that WWE helped put Lucha Libre on the map. Or at least that's the translation I saw. And if that is what he actually said, oh boy. Yeah, if you really want to be honest about who put Lucha Libre on the map in the United States, it wasn't WWE, and it wasn't even AEW. It was WCW and Eric Bischoff. Bischoff is the one who got that first Worlds Collide show, or When Worlds Collide, to be carried by the pay-per-view providers in this country. And to his credit, it was Bischoff who gave people like Rey Mysterio and Juventud Guerrera and Psychosis and La Parca television exposure on a major network like TNT. Yeah, I know a lot of those guys passed through ECW first, and Heyman used them, but they got the exposure working matches on Nitro. And through that exposure, Rey Mysterio got a job working for WWE when WCW went belly up. Yeah, now whether WWE helps put Lucha Libre on the map here in a way that it isn't already, that remains to be seen. This is just one show. This is the first show where you had WWE branding on it. Yeah, there's definitely been more of a Lucha Libre presence on American television in the last couple of years between WWE and AEW, like in a way that I haven't seen since the WCW days. That much is for sure. We had Aerostar, Octagon Jr., and Mr. Iguana. Oh, I know a lot of people wanted to know what I thought of Mr. Iguana. The biggest new star to be made this entire weekend against Dragon Lee, Cruz del Toro, and Lince Dorado, replacing Joaquin Wilde, who got knocked out cold during a speed taping on Monday in a match against Lexis King, so they kept him off the show. I don't know if he got concussed. I don't know if they just kept him off as a precautionary measure, but probably a good idea. I had never seen Mr. Iguana before. If you would have told me before this weekend, hey, are you excited to see Mr. Iguana this weekend? I would have looked at you and said, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. This was my first exposure to him, and I love the guy. He comes to the ring with a stuffed iguana that he has named Yeska. He's completely committed to the act. Now, is it goofy? Absolutely. Am I going to feel the same way in 6 months? Maybe not. So yes, it is goofy. I mean, think Santino with the Cobra. Okay, but this was more of an ongoing bit during the match than Santino with the Cobra, where he would just bust it out for one spot at the finish. But yeah, I saw Rob Viper had a great thread on this on Twitter, comparing Mr. Iguana to Dragon Lee, who was also in this match. Dragon Lee is a great wrestler. And some people would call him one of the best luchadors in the entire world. I remember when he came in, there's a lot of fanfare behind Dragon Lee's debut in NXT. But he is one of many, right? There's really nothing else about him that necessarily makes him stand out other than he's a great wrestler. And he's mostly floundered so far in WWE. They stuck him in a group, and he's just another guy. And really, WWE signed him. If you remember that whole situation, they signed him away from AEW just to make Tony Khan look bad. Tony featured him on Dynamite. It might have only been once or twice. He had no contract, but he was featured. And then I think like 3 months later, he signed a contract with WWE. That's why he was signed. And he did pretty well in NXT, not so much on the main roster. A guy like Mr. Iguana, like, he's not the best wrestler. He's fine. He's a solid worker, but he's not like an elite level performer or anything like that. But in one match here, look at how the Iguana stuff got over. Nobody was talking about Dragon Lee. They were all talking about a fucking iguana. And at the post-show press deal, Triple H talked about him and said, "I never knew iguanas were so much fun. I think kids are going to want iguanas everywhere." Just off that one comment alone, he's a made guy. That's it. Like, they're going to make so much money off selling those iguanas. Like, they'll make more on their investment in Mr. Iguana than they ever will off Dragon Lee. And that's what they care about. So for him, it was a great first showing. And I got a kick out of the whole, anytime he was in the ring, the whole bit. I thought the match itself was fun. Octagon pin Dorado after an avalanche moonsault fallaway slam to give the first win to the AAA guys. Dominic Mysterio and Liv Morgan, they were sitting ringside for the match. And when it was over, Dom cut a promo on Octagon being a big Rey Mysterio fan, which led to Octagon dragging him over the barricade and into the ring, and the two of them brawled. And it ended with Dom challenging him to an Intercontinental title match at Money in the Bank, which popped the crowd because most of those people were probably going to Money in the Bank as soon as the show was over. So we finally got our fifth match added to the Money in the Bank card. It only took until the day of, but we finally got that fifth match. We had Stephanie Vaquer and Lola Vice from NXT against Chick Tormenta and Dalise. Good match. Not as fun as the opener, but still good. Solid stuff here. That double devil's kiss from Stephanie and Lola was something else. I mean, that got a rise out of the crowd. I'm sure in more ways than one. Stephanie wins it with the SVB to Dalise, her second win in less than 24 hours, coming off SmackDown the night before. And she still had one match left to go. In 1 week, she worked Raw, she worked SmackDown, she worked the AAA show, and she worked Money in the Bank. And she was over everywhere she went. Her rise has been something else. You know, she and Julia, they came in around the same time. And I think Julia will do well. Fans still really haven't fully taken to her yet, although she only first got called up to the main roster like 2 weeks ago. But, you know, I think she'll do well. Stephanie, though, has just taken off like a rocket ship. And if you were to ask anybody, like, what do you think her weakness is? Or does she have any holes in her game? My guess is that you will have fans who say, well, it's her promos. And the promos may hold her back from, you know, getting to that next level. Like her English is not necessarily where they want it to be. The reality is, like, her English is getting better. But, I mean, it's not like she's fluent or anything. But neither is Io Sky. And I use her as an example because of the way that she's really taken off over the last 6 or 9 months. Like, the fans gravitated to her organically because they just really like her. And she's fun to watch. Stephanie has that same quality. So even if her promos maybe are the weak part of her game in a company that relies very much on your ability to communicate verbally on TV, she's still going to do very well. Like, you could tell she is a superstar in the making. Legado del Fantasma against Psycho Clown, Pagano, and El Hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr. I don't know. Pagano felt off to me during this. Good stuff overall, especially as the pace picked up, and a rare win for Santos Escobar. He doesn't get the chance to pick up a W very often, but they did here. So this was good. We had a four-way For the NXT North American Championship, Ethan Page defending against Rey Fenix, Javon Evans, and Laredo Kid. As soon as they announced this, you knew this was going to end up getting crazy. This was the best match of the night up until the main event. There was a crazy moonsault DDT that Kid caught Fenix with. Evans connected with this just beautiful OG cutter on Laredo Kid. But then he got thrown out of the ring by Ethan Page, who finished Laredo Kid off with the twisting grin for the win to retain the title. Looking at who was in there, I should have figured it would probably be Laredo Kid eating the pin. I didn't think they would want Javon taking the fall there, and Fenix definitely wasn't going to be taking the fall. But an excellent four-way, and fun stuff from start to finish. And in the main event, it was Chad Gable getting that main event shine. You love to see it, even though he lost again. But don't tell me you expected anything different here. You had to know coming into this that he was losing. Challenging El Hijo del Vikingo for the AAA Mega Championship. This was the biggest stage yet for Vikingo, and he delivered. A Vikingo match. If you have ever seen Vikingo work before, you know what he does. You're going to see a lot of crazy dives inside the ring and outside the ring. We got a ton of those here. But Gable was right there with him for the entire thing. Like, these two worked really well together. And as impressive as all the lucha stuff is that Vikingo does, Gable got to do some things here that we normally never see him do. There was a spot where Gable was standing on the outside, and Vikingo came off the top rope with a 630 senton to the back to a standing Chad Gable. So that was nuts. One of the craziest spots of the entire night, I say one of because they followed it up soon after with the crazy spot of the night, and that includes Money in the Bank later, but Gable delivered an avalanche sit-out powerbomb. It looked from the first camera angle like a fucking top rope pile driver. Remember Survivor Series at 95? I want to say it was Jannetty who gave Chris Candido, Skip, of the Body Donnas, a top rope pile drive. Like, I don't see that move very often, but when I initially saw like that angle of this, that's the first thing that popped in my head. But it was more of a sit-out power bomb, and Vikingo was dead. I mean, that was insane. And even more insane, and not in a good way, Vikingo kicked out. Now, I will say, I am not a fan of kicking out of a move like that. I think it's stupid, but it was still insane to see Gable bust that out. Then, Vikingo comes back with a Canadian Destroyer from the top of the ring post to Gable on the apron, which may have been even more insane than the Avalanche Powerbomb. And later on, Gable placed Vikingo on a table outside the ring that he had set up, came off the top rope with a moonsault, and crashed through the table. I mean, these guys were out there just destroying each other. And for the finish, Vikingo spiked him with a Poison Rana and then landed the 630 splash off the top and pinned him to retain the title. That was a fitting main event to this show. It looked like Vikingo may have hurt his knee at some point there near the end of the match. He was favoring it. I assume he was selling, or maybe he did hurt it, but he just tweaked it, because he was out there at the Intuit Dome later for Money in the Bank, posing. You know, they do those crowd shots, posing in the crowd with a big smile on his face. You know, if he was hurt or if he was limping around, I would imagine we would know about it. And just judging by what we saw here, it couldn't have been that bad if he was hurt. I always worry about that, though, when it comes to Vikingo, because, you know, those knee injuries. He went through a period where it felt like he was constantly getting hurt. And with the style that he works, injuries are going to happen. It's just inevitable. He went all out here because this was the big stage for him, but dialing things back a little bit and picking his spots is probably best for his long-term health. I know Rey Mysterio has said in the past that he's talked to Vikingo and told him, hey, slow down a little bit. But I'm sure people said that to Rey when he was younger, and I doubt that he listened to them either. But a tremendous main event to cap off a very fun show. The jury is out long-term on what a WWE-owned AAA is going to look like, but you know another reason I think I enjoyed this show more than Money in the Bank? In fact, I know this is one of the reasons, not one of the biggest reasons, but one of them nonetheless. I didn't have sensory overload watching this show. with 6 fucking logos plastered all over the ring mat, and the LED barricades, and the ring post casing, and the prime hydration station. They had a clean ring and a clear focus on the action, so you keep your eyes on where they need to be. It's a small thing, but I appreciated that. It was nice.